Hello, it is episode 86 and Strength for Tomorrow Radio. It's been a while. I think Christmas special was the last one that we did with Warren Nugent, a pal of mine. So, hope you had a good Christmas. We're fast approaching March, which is crazy, but I hope the start of your year has been as good as mine. It's been really busy start of the year, as you can imagine, being in the gym, but it's been great. Some new starts. Lots of people making progress, lots of people getting fitter and deciding to make themselves healthier, which is always great. What we're going to talk about today is why sets of 5 work for everybody, how they work for everybody, when they work for everybody, and the reasons for that. When it comes to personal training, when it comes to training people for money to get them results, we want to be as efficient as possible. So we're going to go into all of that. But in weight training theory, whenever you lift weights, if you do a personal training qualification, if you read lots of the journals, lots of the articles, not all of them, but a lot of them, they will give you nice little neat boxes and criteria to fit different physiological adaptations into. So this is often dubbed as the truth when it comes to weight training. It goes something like this. If you want to train for muscle endurance, you need to perform at least 15 reps, 15, 20, 30 reps. If you want to improve hypertrophy, or hypertrophy as the Americans call it, muscle growth essentially, then you need to train 8 to 12 reps. That's the sweet spot. If you want to train for strength, it's anywhere between 4 to 6 reps. And if you want to train power, it's 2 to 3 reps, right? There's been study after study, there's been meta-analysis after meta-analysis, all of which seem to confirm that this is the case. The only problem is, in the real world, it isn't as simple as this, as you can appreciate, hopefully. First of all, let me explain our philosophy whenever it comes to training our clients. How do we go about things? I've tried all the training methodologies over the years. I've tried a lot of the different techniques, a lot of the different main theories. What I have found is most people don't need it to be as complicated as we like to make it to make ourselves feel intelligent or smart. Most people don't need really complex training regimens because they're not elite lifters. They're not power lifters. They're not people who want to go into competition. They're not at the tip of the spear in human performance. Most of them are just normal people like you and me. And if you are an elite athlete in any regard, you probably don't need to be listening to this podcast. You probably need to be doing something more useful with your time. But I'm talking to you, general population. I'm talking to the average Joe. But we've tried the theory. We've tried what is dubbed as the truth when it comes to weight training. We've tried the various training methods, and there is one that works best. So why are sets of 5s and sets of 3s the best use of most of our clients' time? Well, the reason being we can make progress for longer. The reason being we can make progress over years rather than days and weeks. So we often talk about plateaus, and we're going to get into that. But whenever a client comes to us, we want to give them the best possible results in the least possible amount of time. We want to make the best use of their time and their money and their investment. We want to maximize use of your time. Instead of firing a precise sniper rifle, we want to use a shotgun blast that kills as many birds as possible. I'm really sorry for that brutal analogy, but it's really fitting. And I'm not really that sorry because it is a great analogy. Instead of focusing on many individual exercises that target really small, specific muscles, we would have to take lots of days in the gym. We maybe have to do 5 or 6 days in the gym. But instead of that, we use compound exercises. Now, I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for isolation exercises, but we want to get you the most value for your time. So instead of having to spend 5 or 6 days in the gym, we can successfully use 2 or 3 days per week to a devastatingly effective result. We incorporate multiple joints, and therefore multiple muscle groups, focusing on fundamental human movement patterns, sitting down, standing up, lifting stuff off the ground, pushing things away from us, pulling things towards us. And this means you get more work done in less time because you're recruiting more muscle. It creates systemic stress, and therefore you get systematically stronger. We do variations of rows, cleans, deadlifts, chin-ups, and instead of 3 or 4 variations of bicep curls, we do these sorts of exercises. Instead of having to do lat pull downs, back extensions, hamstring curls, glute bridges in the same workout, we just do deadlifts. Right? Simple as that. It essentially means you're doing one exercise instead of 4 or 5. You can do one exercise across 10 minutes for a few sets instead of spending an hour on this little muscle area. You ever heard them saying like, oh, it's bicep day, or it's back day, or it's leg day? We don't really administer that. We don't adhere to that very much. We train fundamental human movement patterns. We're called cross-functional fitness. We believe in functional movement. And that doesn't mean balancing on a Bosu ball. That doesn't mean doing ridiculous things with kettlebells and acting a bit of a clown and just being silly, asking for injuries. We believe in moving our bodies in a way that they were designed to move. So moving our joints in a way that they were intended to move. So whenever you do stressful compound movements for sets of 5, it's so much easier to concentrate and perform high quality reps than it is for 10 or 12 reps. For example, it's all too easy, we've all been there, to get sloppy because of a loss in concentration, because of fatigue accumulation. If you're doing more reps in a set than this, as some protocols prescribe, the chances of repetitive strain injuries dramatically increases. The chances of twinging something because you weren't keeping your core tight, or you get a little bit imbalanced, get a little bit off, it goes up dramatically. And in the chances of just overusing the muscles. And we also believe a big theme of ours is minimal effective dosage. So this is typically used in pharmaceuticals, in the medical industry probably. But whenever you're in your teens or in your 20s, you can pulverize your body. I've been there. You can beat your body up. You can do more volume. You can recover quicker. Need less recovery time in between. You can take more intense beat downs, essentially. You can take them more frequently and for longer. You'll heal quicker. You'll adapt quicker. And many of us erroneously interpret this to mean that more is better. It doesn't always equate, but whenever you get into your 30s and your 40s and beyond, you'll appreciate minimal effective dosage. And that's another big concept that we like to hit upon. It's easy to be lulled into that false sense of invincibility until you hit your 30s, your 40s. It's not as easy to recover. It gets harder. Add this to all the other things that come along with into your 30s and 40s, like kids, sleepless nights, work stress, house stress, financial stress, illnesses, aches, pains, social pressures, and pretty soon your recovery resources are going to be greatly depleted before you've even got near the gym's front door, right? So that's why minimal effective dosage is useful. You've probably heard that phrase before, but a minimal effective dosage is the very least you need to administer in order to derive the benefit from the drug or the supplement, or in our case, the exercise. In training, the same applies. We want to administer the minimal effective dosage of stress from training in order to derive the maximum benefit. Not one rep more, not one rep less, not just doing reps for the sake of it, not one exercise more than you need to do. Why? Well, because we want you to be able to recover successfully before your next session, so you'll be consistent with your training. Missed sessions are one of the biggest reasons people stop making progress or start to stagnate and start to regress in their progress. And training is hard. If you're doing it right, that is. If you're doing training properly, it's hard. It's not easy. Why would we want to make it any harder by giving you more to do than you essentially need? It really beats me. If you have any answers, send them in on a postcard. We've said it before in this podcast. We've said it many times. Strength makes everything easier. I think we've even had a podcast titled that, and we go in depth into what that means and why that is the case. But everything in life gets easier whenever you're stronger. Everything. Moving your own body about is easier if you're stronger. Quite simply, it's the way that you interact with your physical reality. The process of acquiring more strength changes not only how you interact with your physical reality, but how you mentally deal with that reality as well. Much is made of calorie burn. How many calories did you burn in your session? Which exercise burns the most calories? And you'll see all these articles in Men's Health, Women's Health, and all the crap that's out there. The truth is, sleeping for 8 hours will burn more calories than the toughest gym workout you can possibly imagine. And I've said this before, but training is more than about burning calories. If you just train with the purpose to mindlessly burn calories, it's like driving around just to burn fuel with no destination in mind. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, a waste of effort. Burning fuel for the sake of burning fuel. So, training is about much, much more. It's about more than just expending energy. It's about improving your metabolic health. It's about better bone density, as we've talked about recently. It's about improved muscle, ligament, tendon strength, better balance, better mental health, reducing your risk of chronic disease, being more confident, being more capable, and being more useful. The other side of it is we use sets of 5 and then eventually sets of 3 for women and older adults. And the reason is sets of 5 work for everybody at the start in making progress, regardless of their age, of their sex, of their goal, sport, or background. And whenever I say progress, I mean the ability to make improvements to the exercise over time. And when I say time, I mean years, not weeks. I've mentioned that already. It's a really important factor. This is why there's so many people program hop. This is why so many coaches and trainers give out programs and they're jumping from this program to that program to this program to that program. That's cool focal effect I'm getting there when I do that. Gets it across. But the reason they have to do that is because they stall. Their clients are stagnating. They're not getting any stronger. They're not getting any improvements. They're not getting any further. And the reason for this is they're not applying the stress recovery adaptation phenomenon as well as they should be. So if you want to get leaner, what do? Sets of 5 will accomplish this. If you want to get stronger, sets of 5 will work. If you want to get better muscle endurance, sets of 5 will help set you up. They're not going to get you there entirely, but it's going to be a good start. If you want bigger muscles, sets of 5 will do this if you eat enough calories, quality calories that is. Are you a guy? Sets of 5. Female? Sets of 5 to start with. Are you a teenager? Sets of 5 will work. Are you in your 70s? Sets of 5, and then sets of 3 after a while. Again, for recovery is the main reason. If you play rugby, sets of 5 are going to work. Play Gaelic, sets of 5. Golf, sets of 5. Tennis, sets of 5. If you're a novice, sets of 5. So this typically goes against traditional wisdom, but if you keep listening and you want to understand why sets of 5 work regardless of the goal. So if we're getting leaner, that was the first one. You might think, and I've made this mistake before, if you want to get leaner, lose fat, you need to get your nutrition on point. That's the first thing we need to talk about. You need to be in a calorie deficit to some degree. The easiest way to do this is to monitor your energy intake and ensure that it's less than your energy expenditure. This is the case regardless of whatever your mode of training is. Okay, so whether it's high reps and lightweight or low reps and heavyweight. But keep listening, okay? The best bit is what most people miss. This next little bit. When you deprive your body of the energy it requires, you listening? Your body begins to cannibalize itself essentially, which means a reduction in tissue, muscle and fat. You want to lose fat, but your body doesn't really care. Your body doesn't care whether it's muscle tissue or fat tissue that's using for fuel. It'll take whatever it can get and it will use it for energy because you're depriving of that energy through your calorie restriction. But you want to create the best possible scenario for your body to use fat tissue. You want to retain muscle for a number of reasons. The first one is so you don't look like a shriveled up raisin by getting rid of the firmer, harder tissue that lies underneath the fat, which is skeletal muscle. Number 2, muscle is what's known as active tissue. It uses more energy than fat tissue just by existing, just when you're resting, when you're sleeping, when you're lying about, being a big useless loaf. But it also does it whenever you're working out because it allows you to lift more. Okay? This means it's easier to stay leaner and to manage your weight long term. And this is what a lot of people miss. And this is what people miss, especially whenever they go into an extreme calorie deficit or they try to go on a diet and eat salads, right? And they do loads of cardio. This is what happens. But more importantly, number 3, muscle is like a glucose sponge, right? So your body will better use sugar, i.e. carbohydrates, with more muscle at its disposal. This again emphasizes why it's so important to build muscle and retain muscle if you care about keeping unwanted fat off your belly and elsewhere. So what role does sets of 5 play in all of this? Well, it's difficult for your body to build muscle whenever you're in a calorie deficit, regardless of the number of reps you do. If you lift heavy weights while in a calorie deficit, you're still sending a signal that you need muscle. You're telling your body, we need this muscle. It's required. We're working. This helps to create the best possible conditions for your body to opt for fat tissue as fuel if you're in a calorie deficit. That's the caveat, if. Whenever you combine this with increased protein intake, it further enhances the conditions for your body to retain muscle and burn fat tissue effectively. Lots of people, including myself in the past, make the mistake of lifting lighter weights and for more reps while in a calorie deficit, thinking it's going to tone them up, right? This is a big mistake, and the reason for this is muscle doesn't tone. Did you know that? It doesn't tone. It either increases or decreases in size. Toning up requires a reduction in body fat tissue, which covers a firmer, harder tissue underneath, which is muscle. And the truth is, this can either be increased or reduced as well. And aside from the points above, which highlight the importance of using heavy weight while in the calorie deficit in order to send the appropriate signals for muscle retention and fat loss, the other important statistic to remember is that light, medium, or heavy weights all burn similar calories. Okay, so if you do 100 kilos for 5 reps, or you do 50 kilos for 10 reps, you're still burning similar calories, okay? It's not that big a difference. Now, obviously, rest times and things like that can make a difference, but if you think you're burning more calories because you're doing 20 reps or cardio, which will enhance your calorie deficit, you're likely wrong, right? But not only is your arithmetic wrong, you're also sending the wrong signals, meaning your body's more likely to cannibalize muscle tissue instead of fat because it's not being worked as hard. You're not working it in the same way as you would with heavy weight. So that's why heavy weight is important. And heavy is relative to the person. My heavy is going to be different to yours. Yours is probably heavier. That's the truth. What about building muscle? Some people like to divide up the reps into strength. So we said before, 4 to 6 reps. Muscle group, 8 to 12 reps. The truth is that if you're a complete beginner, any rep scheme is going to make you significantly stronger initially, at least for the first few weeks. The problem is that really quickly you'll run to a brick wall and progress will stop. The other problem is you're more likely to have significant muscle soreness due to the accumulation of eccentric reps. That's the lower end phase of the rep. So if I'm doing a curl and I'm letting the weight down, that's the eccentric phase. Sets of 5 will build muscle more effectively than sets of 8 to 12 with less work required and allow you to keep training for longer without hitting a plateau. That has been my experience in training myself and training hundreds of other people at this stage. And if you follow Starting Strength at all, that's been the case for them as well. You could train for 1 to 2 years and change absolutely nothing apart from the load on the bar in every workout and make progress with sets of 5. So somebody said, idiots love complexity. And it's so true. People think you need to make things really complicated and it can impress people. It only impresses people that maybe don't know any better, right? That's not me saying that you're an idiot if you like complexity. I think there's a time and a place for complexity, but most of us are bamboozled by complexity. I know it somehow impresses us, I guess. But a common objection I hear is, what about so-and-so? He's really strong, but he's not that big. He doesn't carry much muscle. He's not all bulky, but he's really strong. Surely you need to do the 8 to 12 range to get bigger muscles, to get that hypertrophy. It's a great question and it's a good observation. And I often wondered that myself. But you absolutely can get significantly stronger without adding muscle mass, without adding lots of width to your shoulders and getting bulky, as people describe it. Up to a point, that is. But the limiting factor is going to be how much food you're eating, how many calories and how much protein you're consuming. For example, if you start training and stick to 3,000 calories per day and you need 3,000 calories to maintain your current size, you will still get stronger. You could double your deadlift from that starting point potentially, but you will limit yourself unless you eat more and put on weight, muscle weight, increased muscle tissue, hypertrophy, if you will. And the person in the initial example isn't limited because he's doing sets of 5. It's not the rep scheme that's limiting him. He's limiting himself because he's not eating enough. He's restricting his calories in accordance with the work he's doing, with the stress he's applying. So he's limiting his ability to grow muscle because of the tissue. He's not able to build tissue because doesn't have enough calories. Okay, it's like trying to build a house without blocks. Got to run out of room pretty soon, aren't you? You're going to stop. The project is going to grind to a halt. So if he wanted to keep getting bigger and keep getting stronger, increase his muscle size, he could do so by continuing with heavy sets of 5s, maybe sets of 3s, maybe having to do 5x5s, maybe do something else. But instead of medium or light 8 to 12s, or by eating 4 or 5 or 5,000 calories, he's going to be able to do that, not by changing the rep scheme. To accumulate tissue, whether it's muscle with training and quality calories, or fat with less training or no training and junk calories, right? You need to be in a calorie surplus. So we've all seen the people who have put on weight and have blamed weight training for them getting all big and fat, right? That's not the weight training's fault. You can get big and fat without doing weight training. It is the quality of the calories, the total amount of the calories, and in a lesser extent, the timing of the calories. Those are the difference makers. This is why bodybuilders, right, they have the best physiques that everyone remembers. The guys that people remember, Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, right, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all those guys. Everybody remembers them. They trained heavy, though. They were strong guys. They didn't do very many 8 to 12s. For some exercises, I guess they did, but they did the compound lifts. They did all the big exercises. They got that way because they lifted big, heavy weights, not light weights 15 times. And as well as using anabolic steroids, but we'll ignore that for the point of our conversation. Back to reality. No one is asking you to take anabolic steroids. No one's asking you to become a bodybuilder. Bodybuilders are a rare breed in more ways than one. They got there due to having a really specific set of genetics. Got very thin skin, low subcutaneous fat, naturally speaking, and the ability to accumulate muscle tissue much easier than the rest of us. But the way they do things does shed a lot of light on how real muscle growth happens. And what about the studies that are performed that seem to indicate the 8 to 12 is the proven hypertrophy range? What I've noticed in these studies are a few common themes that doesn't seem to be discussed, or they don't seem to think it matters. First of all, they're short term. They usually fit into a term, funnily enough, 8 to 12 weeks, right? Convenient. It fits into like a semester or a term, right? This doesn't demonstrate it's useful beyond 12 weeks, which is what, as a professional trainer, I'm interested in. I want to make sure my clients are making progress beyond 12 weeks. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty crappy business. In the real world, it becomes untrainable. It becomes unsustainable. You hit a plateau, and then we blame all sorts of things for the plateau. This is why common bodybuilding trick advise you to shock your muscles. Have you heard that before? I nearly coughed into the mic. I tried to cough away from the mic. But this is why this used to be a really common bodybuilding trick. If you go on bodybuilding.com, I remember reading it back in the day, and it would be like, oh, you need to shock your muscles. And I was thinking, shock my muscles? Do I need to hook it up to the battery of my car or something? I didn't have a car. I was too young to have a car. My parents' car. But how do we shock things? The whole point, it was the kickstart. It was the kickstart, the muscle growth, and go, I remember how to grow muscle again. And one of the ways to shock the muscle was either to go really light and do loads and loads of reps, even more reps, or to go really heavy, right? It's kind of what we're saying. Which one might work better? The other problem with the studies is they're conducted on novices most of the time. They're not conducted on experienced people. And whenever I say novice, I mean people who are not even by experience, but by how strong they are, not how many years they've been training. And that's how we would determine between a novice, intermediate, or advanced lifter. Are you deadlifting more than twice your body weight? Because if you're not, you're definitely still a novice. Okay. In many ways, I'm top end of a novice. Maybe I'm still hanging out in the intermediate phase, but I'm definitely not much more than that. It depends how far you want to take your training, but yeah, they're conducted in novices who, as we've already stated, they will get stronger and grow muscle with any rep range. So I'm talking about complete novices. A lot of these studies are performed on. So they go from people who are just getting off the couch and maybe they do a bicep curl, right? Something that's, again, an isolation exercise, not a one that's going to create systemic stress. It's often really unclear how they're measuring the supposed muscle gains. There are two phenomena that occur after training muscles, particularly after doing lots of reps, like 8+. A blood pump occurs. So guys love that feeling, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger used to talk about it in very glowing terms. There's a famous interview with him, but a blood pump occurs for a few hours following, which swells the muscle beyond its normal size. There's also a glycogen pump, which can last a little bit longer. If the biceps were measured at this time, guess what? They would be huge. They would be so much bigger. But it's an artificial result. It's not a long-term anatomical change, right? Whenever someone tells me they want to increase muscle size, but they don't want to get stronger, I often wonder, why would someone want to not to only look stronger but not actually be stronger? I can't compute that. I just don't get that. If you have any answers, if you can tell me, I would love to know. I've never understood that. Why would this be useful to anybody in any way? If you know the answer, please do let me. I'm not being funny. I genuinely like to know. And if you're still in any doubt as to whether strength and muscle size are inextricably linked, you should search for the photo of former world's strongest man, Brian Shaw, presenting the trophy at Mr. Olympia a few years ago. Actually, I'm going to try and pull it up here. This one's really funny. He absolutely dwarfs these guys. See if we can find it here. Yeah, this is so good. Let's see if we can get it up here. Like, can you see that? Isn't that great? Look at that. Look at him. He's huge. He's absolutely huge. Yeah, it's brilliant. So, Brian Shaw, in case you don't know who Brian Shaw is, I'm kind of. I thought it was funny. Yeah, Brian Shaw. What a guy. He's a big dude, right? He's absolutely huge. I'm trying to figure out where I was at here. So we can talk about it. But yeah, Brian Shaw, right? He was presenting the Mr. Olympia trophy a few years back. And Brian Shaw was world's strongest man several times. Big guy. He's like 6'8" or 9". He's massive. But this is an example of two professionals at their given disciplines at the extreme end of the scale, and the very obvious size difference is enormous, excuse the pun. But Brian Shaw doesn't just happen to be insanely strong. He's also incredibly big. Now, granted, he's carrying more fat than those guys. A lot more fat. But compared to those elite bodybuilders, he dwarfs them. They all tend to be a lot shorter elite bodybuilders. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And the reason being, your limbs look better when they're shorter, and then your muscle looks bigger because your limbs shorter, right? It's like you see two people who weigh the same weight and one's taller, one's shorter. The shorter person kind of wears it better in one sense if they've got muscle, but it doesn't look as good if they're carrying fat, right? And the same is the case if you're taller, right? But Brian Shaw, he's incredibly big. He completely dwarfs those guys. Yes, they're significantly more lean, but if someone like Shaw wanted to, he could reduce his calorie intake over a year or two, and he could lean out. And he'd likely never be as lean or look like those guys look. He would never get his body fat down below sub like 10%, like killing himself. His genetics, I don't think, would allow him to. Not many people's genetics do allow them to safely and effectively, but sorry, but he accumulated muscle and got extremely large. Funnily enough, he's also extremely strong. If someone was serious about putting on significant muscle, they would lift heavy ass weights, as Ronnie Coleman said, and eat more food than they wanted. They would accept that they might put on some body fat in the process. They generally would put on body fat in the process, but understanding this could be dropped. This could be dropped away. This could be stripped down without too much trouble and a little bit of patience. And that's the key to not putting on too much fat. It's to focus on quality calories, high protein, avoiding sugar, not eating junk, not just eating whatever food you see in sight, and then saying, I'm in a bulk, in a bulk. There's lots of guys that's happened to, and they've never come out of the bulk, unfortunately. They never come out doing their and that's sometimes the problem with doing a bulking phase and a cutting phase and a bulking phase and a cutting phase. If you're doing it really badly, if you're doing it really unhealthily. But what about other training goals? What about, and you do fives indefinitely? And this depends how seriously you're taking things. The only reason to do 8+ squats or deadlifts would be for mental health reasons, right? Is for a mental break, not because it would be physically more beneficial, right? I guess you can get a little bit of an aerobic benefit if you're doing more reps and less weight, but it's overall, I don't think it's as useful. There's other exercises where it is more useful to do more than 5 reps. As a general thing, women do tend to respond better to sets of 3 after a while due to their unique neuromuscular efficiency. Basically, men and women recruit muscle differently. Women require heavier weights to switch on the motor units in their muscle. Men don't require as much loading as close to the maximal to switch on motor units effectively. If you want to improve your athletic performance in your sport, sets of 5 are going to serve you better than sets of 8 to 12. Why? Well, because you'll be stronger. Sets of 5 will make you stronger than sets of 8 to 12. Everything gets stronger. If you squat, bench press, clean, deadlift, strict press, chin-ups, incrementally loading the weight in every session, everything gets stronger. You are systematically stronger. Not just your arms, not just your legs, your core, your neck, your joints, your tendons, your ligaments, your bones, all your connective tissue, it all gets stronger together. Instead of doing 1,000,000 sit-ups, do some heavy squats or deadlifts for 5 reps with a stiff core. Rest 2 or 3 days, come back in and use that adaptation that's occurred to lift a little bit more the next time. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Now, we'll not go into it, but there has been this phase of functional training, inverted commas, that people try to mimic the sport that they are doing by loading it up. So they'll swing a heavier and heavier baseball bat, thinking that that is functional training. What's the other silly things they do? Try to forget about them, but you see some ridiculous stuff. If you want a good laugh, look up Joel Seedman. That's all I'm going to say. But Starting Strength, they're a really good article. It's a really famous article now. It's called The 2-Factor Model of Sports Performance. And it delves into how we need to separate training and practice. So training is in the gym, doing weights, getting everything stronger. Practice is out in the field, doing your discipline, whether it's football, Gaelic, rugby, baseball, golf, tennis, whatever it is. You're practicing, you're finding the motor patterns, but you're able to hit it better. You're able to move better if you're stronger. We've already pointed out how you won't increase in muscle size unless you eat enough to facilitate this. The idea that you'll get big and bulky, remember that was what women and some men, but mostly women, thought it happened to them in the 90s and the early 90s as well. Hopefully we've come around to that idea that it's not what happens. This idea you get big and bulky or muscle bound will only happen if you make it or allow it to through your diet being absolutely garbage, by consuming too much sugar and drinking too much alcohol. But what about long distance or endurance athletes? Wouldn't it be better to do high reps for them with light weight? Doesn't it translate better? I used to think so, but I was wrong. And it doesn't happen often. Ask my wife. Besides the fact you've already, doing high reps in your discipline, you're doing lots and lots of strides in your running, you're doing lots and lots of strokes in your swimming, you're doing lots of revolutions in your cycling. The answer is no for the reasons above. I understand that you don't want to put on weight because every extra ounce you carry will sap energy, but as illustrated above, unless you intentionally put on weight with a sloppy diet, lots of sugar consumption, you can get significantly stronger and stay at the same body weight. For example, a marathon runner, they could take their squat from 40 kilos up to 100 kilos in about 4 to 12 months. And their body would thank them for it. Their performances would thank them for it, through fewer niggles, less aches, less pains, all the while staying the same body weight. Right? They could easily stay at like 70, 80 kilos, 60, 70, 80 kilos easily, and wouldn't have to actually put on an ounce, and they could get their squat up to that. They could get their deadlift up past that as well. And guess what? Their hamstrings are stronger. Their bones are stronger. All their joints are stronger. What about older people? Again, common and kind of folklore tells you that they should be doing high reps and light weight. But what are the common problems that older people have? One is bone density disintegration, muscle loss, strength loss, balance loss, flexibility loss. So if their goal is better bone density, better balance, better cognition, better mobility, sets of 5 will improve all of this. Just as importantly, they'll recover better than they will with sets of 8 to 12 due to less eccentric reps. Lighter weight does not make bone grow as well as heavier weight. You can only do heavier weight for less reps, right? But you need to do enough reps, an accumulation of reps, to cause a stress. That is enough to cause that adaptation to occur. So this is why we are big advocates of sets of 5 here for everybody as a starting point, not as a finishing point, not as an elite training methodology. For everybody, it can improve everybody. Some will benefit more than others, but it's a great place to start. It's not a bad place to stay either. It's a nice area to stay, and you can live a good active life if you're still doing that rep range. It all depends on how far you want to take things in the direction you want to go. But rest assured, we prescribe 5s for lots of very, very good reasons, as hopefully this episode has outlined, as hopefully you can understand that and see that. There are lots of upsides, there are very few downsides. As I said, it's all about efficiency, it's all about minimal effective dosage, and it's all about keeping progress going for the long term. There are exceptions, but more often than not, this is a phenomenon we see. This is what we basically see all of the time, every week. We've noticed it for years. And as I say, we've tried all of the different methodologies. We've tried Brad Schoenfeld's. Like, I've got a bunch of books here. You can probably see them. Maybe not down here. There's so many different training methodologies out there. We've tried them all, and some of them just work better than others. As simple as that. Training with sets of 5 is the best way to get stronger. Whenever you're stronger, you're better at every physical endeavor. That's about all we have to say. I don't really have much else to add. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, if you have any pushback or any feedback or anything you'd like to comment on, do drop me a message. Or you can comment. We're going to publish this episode on our website as well. Going to publish it as a written document. Some people just like to read it rather than listen to me. Don't blame you. But we will hopefully be back again very soon. If you've any ideas for any shows, if you've any things you'd like clarified, do let us know. But in the meantime, don't forget to train today so you can be stronger tomorrow.